It's been 50 years since the Cuban Revolution happened, changing the political scene of Cuba from a capitalist society to communism, which happened at the height of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States, ruled by the leadership of Fidel Castro until February of 2008. This video covers a short timeline of the life of Fidel Castro. Fidel Alvarado Castro Ruz was born in 1926. His father, Angel Castro, was a businessman who carried a whip and a gun at all times. His mother, Lina Ruz Gonzalez, was one of his father's servants who bore Fidel out of wedlock. They were married several years later after his father's first wife died. His father was considered wealthy, owning a farm that employed 300 people, but were not considered part of the culture class. At a young age, Fidel had a share of tantrums and other problems. He was sent to a Jesuit boarding school in Santiago de Cuba. Other students didn't get along with Fidel, calling him a peasant, and teased him. Fidel got the attention of the U.S. at the age of 14 when he sent a letter to President Roosevelt asking for a $10 bill because he had never seen one before. A copy of the letter is held in the U.S. government archives. Later on in his life, he attended Bellin College before getting his law degree from the University of Havana. There have been rumors that Fidel was scouted for professional baseball but was never given a chance to play. While attending college at the University of Havana, he played as a pitcher for the college team. The Pittsburgh Pirates, as well as other teams, were scouting him, but they felt he wasn't fast enough for the team. In 1952, General Batista took control of the government from President Carlos Prio. The next year, on July 23, 1953, Castro, with 123 armed men and women, attempted to overthrow the government by attacking an army barracks in Moncada. The coup failed. 5 were killed during the battle, and 56 were later executed. Fidel and his brother Raul were later captured. The brothers were placed on trial. Castro spoke for nearly 4 hours on his defense, ending his speech with the words, "Condemn me, it doesn't matter, history will absolve me." Fidel was sentenced to 15 years in Presidio Model Prison, while Raul was sentenced to 13 years. Under political pressure, Batista released Fidel after serving 2 years. He would leave Cuba for Mexico. In Mexico, he would reunite with other Cuban exiles to form the 26th of July movement to attempt to overthrow the Batista government one more time. The second time, guerrilla warfare tactics were used. These tactics have been successful in past government coup attempts in Cuba. Once funding and training was established, they set sail on a yacht to go back to Cuba. On December 26, 1956, the rebels landed near the city of Manzanillo. Only 20 of the original 82 men survived. Fidel, Raul, and the other survivors fled in the Sierra Maestra Mountains. Numerous battles mounted between Batista's troops and Castro's forces increased from other citizens of Cuba who weren't too happy with Batista's leadership. Batista was forced to leave Cuba by plane on January 1, 1958, as he fled to the Dominican Republic. On January 8, 1959, Castro's army marched into Havana. Horns were honking and crowds cheered. Castro took the post as commander-in-chief in the new government formed by José Miro Cardona. While the U.S. government supported the new government, Castro was on the lookout to remove liberal and democratic influences to the point that Cardona resigned and fled to the U.S. On February 16, 1959, Castro was sworn in as president. Free elections were eliminated while Castro was going with the slogan, "Revolution first, elections second." Castro's leadership wasn't welcomed by the United States. President Eisenhower refused to meet with the new leader, but Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev welcomed him with open arms. On May 1, 1961, Castro declared Cuba a socialist state and eliminated multi-party elections. The United States attempted to overthrow the Cuban government with the Bay of Pigs invasion. It was a failure. Tensions were mounted further with the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962, after spy planes discovered construction of missile installations causing the U.S. to blockade nuclear weapons from arriving on Cuban shores. Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles as long as the United States would agree not to invade Cuba. The U.S. would agree. Shortly after the Cuban Missile Crisis, embargoes to Cuba were enacted. No trade between the U.S. and Cuba happened starting in 1963, as well as travel from the U.S. to Cuba. While the travel ban has been lifted, you have to catch a flight from another country to get there, such as Canada or Mexico. However, it is illegal to spend money or receive gifts in Cuba in most cases. While Cuban cigars have been banned since 1963, they can be enjoyed in Canada. During the Olympic Games in Vancouver this February, many will be purchased, but none are allowed to be brought back into the United States. On February 24th of 2008, Castro resigned as president of Cuba due to health concerns. This put his brother Raul in charge of the country. While communism still exists in Cuba, it did meet its struggles during the change of power in Russia. Losing foreign aid, the nation adjusted during the hard time, rationing food and supplies. There were times that the U.S. did lift the embargo on food supplies to Cuba after Hurricane Michelle heavily damaged the island after Castro proposed to purchase the food. While Cuba brags about an excellent healthcare system as well as a very low literacy rate, the future of communism for the country remains to be seen. Most of Fidel's immediate family have been allowed to live in the United States and are very critical of how the country is being governed. One thing that has been a change in communist theory in the country is religion. Catholicism is being practiced throughout the country. Perhaps more change is in Cuba's future.